Welcome everyone to our webinar on hiring top talent, legal strategies for small businesses. My name is Comfort Nkang, and I'm a practice leader in LegalVision's employment team. I'm joined today by my colleague Lewis, who is a trainee solicitor in our team. So before we begin, a couple of quick housekeeping items. You'll receive the recording and slides of this webinar in your email. And please do submit your questions in the Q&A section, and we'll answer them at the end. Please complete the feedback survey after the webinar too. Also, all attendees are eligible to receive a free consultation with us to discuss how we can help you with your contracts, as well as any other legal needs you have. If you have additional questions following this webinar, you can also utilize the free consultation. To request your free consultation, simply provide us with your contact details in the survey that appears at the end of this webinar. So today we'll be discussing a few points. The first is how to implement a recruitment process that seeks to be dynamic and inclusive. We will also touch on the importance of preparing carefully crafted and legally sound employment documents. And then we'll go on to discuss benefits and reward packages that can attract the best candidates in your industry. Finally, we will discuss fostering an inclusive workplace environment, just so you can retain the talents you've hired. At the end of the webinar, we'll be answering some of your questions. So again, please feel free to submit your questions throughout the webinar through the chat function, and we'll answer them at the end. And now I'll speak about how you can implement a recruitment process that seeks to be dynamic as well as inclusive. So one of the key aspects to hiring top talent is by having a well-run hiring process. So if you have a process in place which seeks to be dynamic and inclusive, then you can demonstrate to your candidates a great first impression. And also it makes your onboarding process a bit, quite seamless. Additionally, by providing a high quality experience, which includes good and effective communication between your recruitment team as well as the candidates, you can maximize your chances of attracting the ideal candidate for the role. The recruitment process is a two-way process, as we all know. So it gives you the opportunity to scope out the ideal candidate that fits into your workplace culture, as well as one that has the skills and experience for the role that you're hiring for. But it's also an opportunity for the candidates to get a front row seat into how efficiently run your business is and whether it is a good fit for them as well. So when considering whether it is the right time to hire, it is essential for you to just sit down and consider the necessary ways and things and resources that you're going to need within your organization to have an effective recruitment process. You should also consider carefully the roles and responsibilities of the new hire. So some of the things worth considering before making the leap to advertise the job can be, what will your recruitment process look like? So will you have a one-stage or a two-stage interview process? Are you the only person that is going to be interviewing all the candidates, or will you have an assessment round? How many people in your organization will also get a chance to interview and meet these candidates? So these are the key things to think about. The other things you should think about as well is, do you know what exactly you're looking for? So are you looking for an individual that just graduated from university, perhaps someone with limited experience in your industry? Or are you looking for someone that's quite skilled and experienced, perhaps someone with 6 to 10 years experience? Again, this, your budget is going to be able to determine this as well, or to weigh the qualifications and skills you're looking for too. You should also consider the market conditions for the particular role you'll be hiring. This is because sometimes it's difficult to find people to do a certain work. And if you're after a candidate with specific experience or years of experience, you may need to budget a higher amount or consider other benefits that will help you attract them. It's especially important as well for smaller businesses who have less resources to do their groundwork, to set themselves up when recruiting by creating just a process that's adequately reflective of an inclusive environment in your workplace, but one that is also very transparent and efficient. So in order to find a candidate that, you need to give them an immersive experience, which allows them to learn more about your company and also how they can be part of your company. So this can leave them wanting to choose you over other potential competing offers they may have. The other thing as well is leveraging social media networks. So professional networks such as LinkedIn can be quite good for small businesses because you can use it to access a diverse set of qualified candidates or people. So we usually recommend using LinkedIn. The other things to consider as well is having an inclusive interview process. So you should aim to run a transparent and engaging interview process that caters to all candidates, irrespective of whether they have a disability or other protective characteristics. So generally, if a candidate is disabled, you should be looking at providing a reasonable adjustment just to allow all the candidates to perform their best during the interview and recruitment process, irrespective of a protected characteristics. The other point as well is that you should consider how you structure your interview and have a scorecard. We usually recommend a scorecard to record and evaluate the skills and experience and traits you are getting from your candidates during the interview process. So this will help also to avoid unconscious bias. And also some candidates may ask for feedback. So if you're happy to provide a feedback after your interview process, it's always good as well to refer back to your scorecard. If you're going to have multiple people or multiple interview rounds with different people in your organization leading on those rounds, you may consider as well evaluating the candidates as a team following the interview process. It's also important to try and put your candidates at ease and provide reasonable adjustment when requested. Arguably, the most important consideration to contemplate are the legal obligations you have to candidates when hiring. The key here is just to ensure that you're moving forward without creating any legal risk for your business and also exposing your business to tribunal claims. That's something you should try and avoid at all costs. So on that note, what I'll be doing now is handing over to my colleague Lewis to talk you through the importance of preparing legally sound documents that can assist you during your recruitment and in some cases as well after your recruitment process.
Thanks, Comfort. Yeah, so when it comes to the importance of preparing carefully crafted and legally sound documents, it's really important that at all times we think about the law. And that's because the last thing we want to do is send anything out that shouldn't be going out to prospective hires. So let's think about job descriptions first. And when we're thinking of putting one of these together, the aim here is that you should be putting together a clear and compliant job description that clearly sets out the job role, expectations and qualifications or experience if you're recruiting for a more senior position for any candidates. And within this, you should be setting out the clear and detailed description, expecting what it is in the role that you will expect from the candidate, detailing the opportunity, any potential growth opportunities and progression and development, and clearly state what qualifications you require and expectations you will have for the individual. And this is really important so that they can get a better insight into what's expected from them and also what is expected from you as the employer and how you can help them in their career progression. And that's another really important point as well when you're trying to retain top talent. It's really showing that you're interested in their career progression over time. In addition to this, what we generally recommend is a job description that positively highlights your company's culture and your stance on diversity and inclusion. And this is really important, particularly as well when we start to see more policies coming into place and a huge shift to firms increasingly setting targets and having a huge push at recruiting those from backgrounds that are traditionally underrepresented. Moving on, there's also the recruitment and selection policy, and my colleague Comfort touched on that just a moment ago during the interview process. And the important thing here is having a recruitment and selection policy that includes the responsibilities of the managers and the recruitment team during the recruitment process and sets out what they're expected to do on their part. Another really important consideration is setting out the importance of the job description and a person specification and highlighting any key criteria, such as, like I said before, any experience, knowledge, skills, and qualifications. Additionally, you'll also want to set out the shortlisting process and how successful interview candidates can move forwards and how to assess whether they're a good fit for the company before coming to that really important decision of whether you want them to work for you or not. Further to that as well, we need to be able to highlight the training and experience required for those taking part in the recruitment process, such as equal opportunities training. And this again contributes a long way to things like unconscious bias, and particularly if there's several interview rounds and you're looking to make that judgment as a team. Another really important consideration once you've found that ideal fit is issuing an offer letter. And this, alongside the employment contract, is the backbone of the employment relationship. How can you demonstrate that your company's forward-thinking and has a seamless process? Well, there's nothing more important than having a clear onboarding process, because this is going to ensure that pre-employment checks are completed smoothly and that the start date is not unnecessarily delayed. And there could also be some really big consequences if you don't carry out those pre-employment checks as well. Additionally, clear conditions need to be included in the offer so that the candidate is reassured that the business is familiar with industry standards. And some other things to consider when considering pre-employment checks would be things to include, such as right to work checks. You might seek some work references from previous employers. If you're working in something like the financial industry or with younger people, you might also seek to have a DBS check as well, as required by law, and provide evidence of qualifications so that you know that the person you have been interviewing is indeed that ideal match. And more importantly, for more senior employees, perhaps those coming from other firms that are similar in nature, just ensuring that they have the right to work for you without any restrictive covenants that could perhaps prevent them from engaging in your sector or indeed your business if you're a competitor. Once you've set all of that out in an employment offer letter, then we move towards an employment contract. And once you've selected the successful candidate, you should make them a verbal job offer, ensuring that no elements of the offer are misleading, and swiftly follow this up with a formal offer letter, as I outlined the contents of a moment ago, and a written terms of employment, particularly if it's a senior individual or that it's a graduate perhaps with several job offers. It's just really make sure that you're honing them down before they might choose somewhere else. At this stage, you also might find it helpful that the successful candidate wants to negotiate aspects of their job offer. And this is not uncommon to occur, particularly for more senior talent who are taking a significant leap and risk when leaving their current role to start your business. And when you come to this situation, or should it arise, you want to carefully consider your capacity to negotiate and be conscious of your upper limits and commercial needs when doing so. Once you've done this, the important thing is agreeing that package and getting that into the terms of employment. Make sure that's carefully drafted to reflect the terms and make sure that the individual is also happy with that. An employment contract ultimately will ensure the parties are clear on what was agreed. It will set out the expectations for the candidate and will operate to protect your business in the event that things don't go to plan. Issuing a contract not later than the beginning of the commencement of employment is one that is a key consideration in addition to one that is suitable for the role when it comes to the nature of the job and the seniority. And this is really important because the last thing that you want to do is issue a junior contract to a senior individual which doesn't encapsulate some further clauses that might be really important with that individual's role. And the same can be argued vice versa. The employment contract must also contain employment particulars required by law, and this is really important to ensure that your contract is compliant, binding, and most importantly, free of any problems down the line. Following on from this, I'm now going to hand back over to Comfort to discuss how some of the incentives you offer can allow you to attract and retain the best candidates in your industry.
Thank you very much, Lewis. So as Lewis mentioned there, usually it's not uncommon for job candidates to negotiate the terms of their employment, in particular the benefits and rewards once they've received their job offer. So I'm now going to talk to you about the benefits and rewards packages that you can try and consider or have in place to attract best candidates in your industry. So first of all, as a small business, you may consider share options where salary does not meet the candidate's salary expectations, or perhaps the market standard. So if you've just launched your business or your small business with not enough revenue to compete with the bigger companies, you may offer shares in your business, and that may be a really competitive reward for a potential employee. The other thing as well you should consider as a benefit or reward to retain top talent is pension contribution, offering and matching employees' contribution above the legal minimum. So when you speak to your pension provider, then you can discuss the terms of the workplace pension scheme. But generally, if you can offer a higher or match a higher contribution, then employees will, especially those that are quite interested in putting money towards their pension, will find this as a good benefit, a good reward. The other thing as well that you can use to attract top talent is a higher leave entitlement. So annual leave in the UK, the statutory minimum is 28 days, and the 28 days includes the 8 days bank holiday we have in England and Wales. But what some small businesses will do is to offer a higher entitlement. So that can be 34 days including bank holidays, or perhaps 32 days including bank holidays, but that's something for you to think about. The other leave as well that may be, quite attractive to candidates is birthday leave. A lot of people don't want to work on their birthdays, surprising enough. So generally, if you make this, a practice in your company that you give a day off on people's birthday, it may be another attractive benefit. And then you can also think about enhancing statutory leave, such as maternity leave, paternity leave, adoption leave, and the rest. So instead of offering a statutory minimum pay, you may offer employees their full salary up to a certain, maybe a few weeks or a few months in terms of like maternity or adoption leave. And generally, that is also attractive benefit. The other things as well, as Louis mentioned, most candidates are always quite excited about joining a company when they realize that the company genuinely cares about their career progression. So offering things like contribution to their training or course fees to support their career development is one thing that can let them know that you genuinely care about their place in your business, but also their future. You may also want to offer flexible working. So generally, post the pandemic, a lot of companies have moved towards hybrid working, but some have moved as far as fully remote working practices. So generally, if you can offer hybrid or remote working options to the candidates or your employees, then this is another way as well that you can attract candidates. If you can't, if your industry is one that doesn't allow people to work from home, or you think is not going to efficient use of people's time, then you can consider the other benefits I discussed. But also as well, some businesses will consider working holidays, whereby employees can work for a few weeks from a location outside the United Kingdom or outside their usual workplace. And generally as well, you may consider a budget for team building and social activities. This will help as well, generally in terms of boosting like team morale, and it will help in your culture as well. So these are the benefits that requires a bit of money. So you do have to consider very, very carefully before you put that job advert out and see whether you can offer any of these benefits and rewards packages in order to be able to attract that top candidate and get them into your company. And now I'll be passing on to my colleague Lewis to speak about some non-financial benefits and rewards that can go a long way to attracting and retaining the best candidates as well.
Thank you, Comfort. And yeah, those financial measures can go a whole long way to demonstrate that you're willing to invest in your employees. However, for a lot of smaller businesses as well, what we might find, as my colleague rightly said, is that this might not always be possible. And as such, the most important thing that we can do is ensure that we're fostering an inclusive workplace. Unsurprisingly, having a great workplace culture will always assist when it comes to hire and retaining top talent. Whether this be reviews that are left when employees leave your company, or the reputation that it builds from internal discussions, having a great reputation is central to attracting and retaining the best talent. Whether it be the simple things, such as having clear lines of leadership, to more comprehensive processes in place, such as staff policies, transparent and open reporting lines, and a sense that employees can trust and respect the processes and mechanisms in place go a long way to reinforcing a positive culture in your workplace. Also, generally people spend a lot of their time at work. So if they can feel like they're in an inclusive environment or one whereby they feel they can be heard, that goes a long way to making someone's job satisfaction a lot better than those who don't have those measures in place. In addition to this, compliance should be a minimum driver of your workplace culture, and it's important that you maintain and enforce these practices as and your policies regularly and consistently, as well as providing training and taking any suggestions from your employees, as ultimately this reinforces the sense that employees are listened to. And as they're on the ground, they may have some suggestions that they think can further the company in its aim as well. So it's really important that you have a culture that fosters all of those things. This is also really particularly important for the upcoming changes to the law and the way in which we have policies. And one of these policies is the harassment policy. And this is important because in October, this is going to be changing because there's going to be an update to sexual harassment obligations. And you can find out a little bit more about that in our previous webinar. But again, another really important why it's important to have policies in place and to keep those regularly updated and consult with your employees. Furthermore, things like poor management or excessive workloads can affect your staff retention. Nobody really wants to work at a company where there's poor management and they can't be heard, or where there's an excessive workload where employees feel burdened. So really having that into consideration is super important. So make sure that your business has a very clear approach to managing and ensuring your top talent's mental and physical health, and also ensure that those reporting lines and leadership are clear and accountable too. Finally, grievances and complaints handling really sets the tone to demonstrate how serious you are about managing compliance and promoting a strong, positive culture. It's one thing to have all of those policy statements that I mentioned a moment ago about what is and what isn't acceptable in terms of conduct or the processes in place to promote the company's culture. But businesses that actually thrive are the ones that act on complaints and take proactive steps to enforce their standards. And that's why it's really important to consider those and put those in place. Additionally, clear grievance and complaint handling processes can really assist a business, as well as making sure individuals are clearly appointed to manage those processes. And this not only helps in retaining talent and attracting it, it also helps in the event that there's any future disputes. It also helps in the event that the law changes like it's set to in October with those new obligations on employers. To talk a little bit more about those legal risks, I'm going to hand you back over to Comfort.
Thank you very much, Lewis. And I'll be sharing legal risk when hiring. A lot of companies don't consider legal risk when hiring, which is why we thought it's important to discuss this with you as well. So at every stage of the recruitment process, you will have legal obligations as an employer or perhaps a prospective employer. So our goal for discussing this as well is that we do not want you to expose your business to tribunal claims under the Equality Act. And beyond this as well, as Lewis mentioned, not getting the right, not getting things right might also send the wrong message, and it can damage your reputation when candidates leave negative or not so nice reviews about your business and their experience during the recruitment process publicly. So generally, touching on discrimination risk, the Equality Act prohibits discrimination in relation to advertising and offering of employment. So during that process, you should avoid using language in job adverts, which could discourage people with protected characteristics, for example, from applying for the role, or using words that imply that only persons with particular attributes, for example, will be considered for the role. Example, you don't want to have a job advert promote, saying that you want young and dynamic individuals, or that your team is quite young and vibrant, because it could expose your company to complaints of discrimination, especially age discrimination as well under the Equality Act, by just giving the impression that the role or your team perhaps is restricted to candidates of a particular age. So the wording of that job description is very, very important. And you should also avoid asking any discriminatory questions during an interview process, unless it's absolutely necessary to determine the candidate's ability to perform the role you're hiring for. So generally, it's, to put the candidates at ease, as I mentioned earlier, it is good to have small talk, but just ensure you limit the small talk as well, and you don't ask any question that is inappropriate. So for certain questions as well that some companies has mistakenly asked is things like, do you plan to have children? What is your religion, or job as an interview questions that ask some very personal questions. You should avoid this. And in order to avoid this as well, hiring managers should go into interviews with pre-prepared questions to ask, and those questions should be very objective and consistent across the board as well, focusing on the skills and competence. So that's what you want to draw out of the candidate. So whilst these things relate to compliance and how you can mitigate risk, being asked personal questions as well can be a very red flag to candidates. So it's unnecessary. And for some candidates as well, it may just make them understand, or it may make them have a knowledge of your culture that you actually don't want to portray. So it may also cause reputational risk as well for your business and affect future hires if they leave a negative review. So generally, avoid personal discriminatory questions, and avoid also job descriptions that are not specific to the skills and experience you're searching for. So focus on the skills and experience, and do not focus on the other things that are not relevant to the role. So that concludes the main part of our webinar. And the other thing as well that we think you might find useful is we have a publication which is called How to Hire and Inspire. It's a very useful guide, and most of our clients have found that quite useful. It's free for you, so it's free to download. You can download the guide in the resources tab, or just by scanning the QR code you can see on the screen now, which will also be in the PowerPoint that will be sent to you. The other thing as well is that we do have an upcoming webinar, an event which you find interesting. So it's tailored to founders, and the title will be How Founders Can Succeed in a Startup Ecosystem. So that is going to take place on Tuesday, 17th of September, 11 a.m. So do feel free to register on our website, legalvision.co.uk/events. And you can keep an eye as well out for future events as well. Generally, how can we assist your business on an ongoing basis, just to get to know about your company and provide all the legal documents that you will need to run a successful business. So you can easily become a LegalVision member, and to do that, you have access to a team of 100+ experienced lawyers to help you sort out all your legal issues and legal needs very quickly. So as said on your screen, we offer unlimited documents and drafting and review services, and also unlimited legal advice consultations. So you can easily have access to lawyers, different areas as well. We also have unlimited domestic trademark applications, which is quite good as well if you're just starting and you want to protect your brand, especially because you do invest a lot into it. And we have very good guaranteed turnaround times as well. So we usually get documents to you within a few working days, which means we don't keep you waiting, and you just get on with running your business. Generally, our fees are quite affordable. It's monthly, so that cost certainty is quite good for small businesses like yourself. And then we have so many in-house lawyers as well on demand that it can always help you. I guess for a start as well, just to have a test of how we can help you and the services we can provide for you, you can use the complimentary legal health check that comes with attending this webinar today. So you're eligible to receive that, and you can discuss all the help you want with one of our lawyers. And to claim it, just simply complete the survey at the end of this webinar. Okay, so now let's move on to answering your questions while you submit them. So we have the QR code again on the screen, and we'll take a minute to tell you more about the LegalVision membership whilst giving you a chance to submit your questions so we can help you answer those on this call. So by becoming a LegalVision member, your business gets unlimited access to our full team specialist lawyers, as I mentioned earlier on. So generally, as a LegalVision member, you wouldn't have to worry about the cost of lawyers on an ongoing basis. So most of our clients think of it as having their own in-house lawyer, someone you can just call and say, okay, I want to make a commercial decision or a legal decision. Is there any risk? Can you notify me of the risk and your advice? And we're always there to answer those questions. To learn more about the membership, please feel free to request that free consultation when the survey appears at the end of this webinar. And now let's go on to answering your questions. So the first question, I'll pass this to Lewis. So someone has asked, what happens if a candidate starts work and still delays sending their documents to include their passport confirming their right to work?
That's a really good one, and thank you for passing that over, Comfort. So yeah, what happens if a candidate starts work and delays sending their important documents? Well, the first thing to consider is urgently request those documents again and make sure that you set a firm deadline when doing so, because they're really, really important to have so you can conduct those checks, and I'll tell you a little bit why in a second. Secondly, maybe consider suspending the employee until the documents have been provided to you, because it's really important that you get hold of those to start that employment relationship properly. And ultimately, if the individual fails to send them after a repeated request, then you can terminate that contract of employment citing breach of contract, because the important thing here is that, look, you need those checks in order to start work. And the reason for this and the legal basis is legal compliance. Employers have a legal duty to verify an employee's right to work in the UK before employment begins. And if you fail to do that, it can result in hefty fines, which can get very expensive for businesses, particularly smaller businesses. And in addition to this as well, there's potential criminal liability, and knowingly employing someone without the right to work is a criminal offence, and that's also another consideration to take into account, and ultimately why there's such an emphasis on getting those details from before the start of the employment relationship. It avoids any of that potential stuff from happening. But also additionally, there's also other considerations, employment status as well. The employment may be considered illegal, like I say, particularly if you knowingly employ someone who doesn't have the right to work. And, this could also cause a contract to become void because they fail to comply with the onboarding terms. And then for you as a business, it's a huge financial risk, not only if you're in breach and you get fined, but also wasted resources and the time and effort that you put into that recruitment process. So this is why it's really important to send an offer letter and an employment contract for signature before the employment starts, so that offer letter can specify, like I was saying earlier, some of those right to work checks and having those satisfied before they start work in the UK. That way you can minimize any risks and ensure that the individual who's starting has all of those checks without you having to worry about those potential consequences.
Thank you very much, Lewis, for answering that question. And I believe the next question as well, Lewis has touched on. So what I'll do is answer the next two questions together. And the questions are, do we have to give an offer letter? I guess Lewis said the importance of issuing one out. And then the next question is, how soon after an offer letter should we send an employment contract? So taking the first question first, do you have to send an offer letter? It is not a legal requirement to send an offer letter, but as my colleague Lewis just mentioned there is advantages to sending an offer letter. One of them is that in the offer letter, you'll be able to set out the conditions of employment. So things like DBS checks, employment reference checks, especially importantly as well, asking the candidate to provide their right to work document once they accept the job offer, just so you can check that they do have the right to live and work in the UK. There are other things as well that you can put as condition on employment, things like them providing you with evidence of the qualifications that was displayed or was shown in their CV. So again, that's something to mention on an offer letter. And usually as well, an offer letter is good for setting out the key or core terms that will come in the employment contract. So at an early stage, you can put the job title and perhaps the salary as well. And you can also put when you would like the employee, the candidate to start working for your company. In case you have different dates as well, then they can tell you, actually, I'm not free to start on this day, and you can negotiate that before you draft the contract and insert the actual start date. And then if you decided to send an offer letter, the next question was, how soon after an offer letter should you send an employment contract? That just depends on your practice. So sometimes, some businesses choose to send the offer letter and attach the contract to the offer letter. So the offer letter will have the employment contract attached to it. So if an individual accepts the offer, they simply review the employment contract, sign the contract, and return it to your company. Alternatively, you can send an offer letter that gives the candidate a bit of time to think about the offer. And if they do accept the offer by writing to you, you then send an employment contract to them to review and sign. So generally, if you were to do that, I would say just give a little deadline. Don't rush them, but give enough time for them to think about the offer, but also for them to be able to get back to you in good time, just so you can prepare the employment contract and send it out to them. So usually you can give them 3 days or perhaps 5 days to review the offer letter and confirm in writing to you by email, perhaps, if they accept the offer. And if they do, you then follow with an employment contract. The key thing is just making sure that they do have an employment contract and they do sign one before they start working for your company. So just looking at the time we have, I think we just have to end the questions there for today. So that's all the time we have for the webinar today. And after the webinar ends, a survey will pop up. So please, we would really, really appreciate it if you could just complete the survey for us. It takes just 30 seconds of your time. And also feel free to include your contact details if you want to receive that complimentary legal consultation to discuss how we can help you find and hire top talent. But also, if you have any general legal needs you want to discuss with a lawyer, feel free to leave your details and help us complete that survey. So on behalf of myself and my colleague Lewis and all the team at LegalVision, would like to really thank you so much for joining us today, and we'll see you in our next webinar. Thank you.
Thank you.